In this crazy world, it's so hard to unwind. So I'm taking time just for me. Gonna find my peace, let my soul be free. In the quiet moments, that's where I'll find a little room to breathe and leave it all behind. Give me room to breathe, I need some time to heal my heart, to clear my mind. Gonna love myself, yeah, I believe in the power of me. Just give me room to breathe.
Great new day to all my self-care friends and family. Welcome back to the Room2Breathe Podcast. I am your host, Life Coach 614, and I am so happy that you've made space to be here with us today. Now, before we jump into today's episode, I need for you to do me a quick favor. If you're feeling the vibe, go ahead and show us some love. Tap the screen, like, comment, but most importantly, I need you all to share this out with someone who could use a little healing energy today. And if this is your first time here or you haven't done so already, be sure to hit that follow button. Subscribe to our channel so that way you're always tapped in when a new episode drops. I also want to personally invite you to check out our digital home at theselfcareclub.org, where you will find everything you need from affirmative apparel to motivational merch, as well as a ton of free resources to help nourish your growth and remind you that you are supported every step of the way. Just know that you don't have to do this alone. We are healing in community, growing one breath, one moment, one day at a time. So today I encourage you to give yourself permission to pause, to make space for peace, for growth, but most importantly for you. And remember, if anything in today's episode hits home, be sure to drop some green hearts in the chat. That is our community's way of saying I am healing, I am growing, and I am showing up for me. Now, let's get ready to breathe, reflect, and grow together. Family, today's conversation is about something simple but powerful. Hey, Cardi girl, welcome in. Today, we're going to talk about the importance of being teachable. Okay? Being teachable. Because you learn nothing if you think you're right all the time. Now, I want that to sit with you for just a moment, because I know on the surface, I think the sentence sounds straightforward, right? It sounds like common sense. Once you start unpacking it, you realize that it touches something deeper in all of us, because that sentence alone can make people uncomfortable. Melody, welcome in. And I mean, I'm not talking a little uncomfortable. I'm talking about the kind of uncomfortable that makes you shift in your seat. Because if we're being honest, most of us don't like being wrong, right? We don't like being corrected. We don't like being told that we misunderstood something. And we definitely don't enjoy the moments where someone holds a mirror up and shows us a perspective that we hadn't considered. And if we're being like all the way real, sometimes we don't like being challenged. Elevated Awakenings, Kale, welcome in. And listen, it's not because we're bad people, right? It's not because we're arrogant. It's not because, that we disregard other people's feelings or that we don't care. It's because challenge forces us to pause and ask the question that our ego is not always, enjoying answering, right? And that's, what if I'm not seeing clearly? And, that question can leave you feeling really vulnerable. I think that many of us have spent years building our identity around being strong and capable, right? Knowledgeable, self-sufficient. Thank you for the follow. We've survived things, right? We've learned through experience. We've developed instincts that helped us to navigate life. Welcome in, Monique. So, when somebody questions our perspective, even in a healthy way, right? it can feel like they're questioning us. But here's the truth. Growth requires something that many people struggle with, and that is humility. Coach Sherelle, welcome in, beautiful. Humility. And that's, again, this is not to beat you up. This is not to point the finger. Hey, Aisha. This is just to honestly say, you know what? I can admit that sometimes I have a problem with humility. We all do, right? Not the kind of humility that, tears you down. Not the kind that makes you feel small or less than. I'm talking about the kind that keeps an open mind, right? The kind that allows you to say, I might not have all the answers yet, or there may be something here that I can learn from. Let me listen before I react. Because, the people who grow the most in life are rarely the ones who think that they already know everything. Okay? They're the ones that stay curious. They ask questions. They reflect. They stay open to new understandings, even when it challenges what they previously believed. Listen, don't worry about it, Brooks. We're all guilty of that. Okay? But again, people who are willing and committed to healing, they stay open to new understanding, even when it challenges what they previously believed. Rose in the house. Hey, girl. Hey. Hey, Twana. And so those are the people who evolve, right? Those are the people who mature emotionally and spiritually and mentally, right? And, when you really stop and think about it, every single major breakthrough in your life has probably come from a moment where you realized something that you hadn't realized before. Maybe you recognized a pattern that you used to repeat. Maybe you saw, your relationship differently. Maybe you learned a boundary that you needed to set. Maybe you realized, a truth about yourself, right? Maybe you realized that the way you move through the world needs work. And see, those teachable moments only happen when we allow ourselves to be taught, right? And so that's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about what it really means to stay teachable. We're going to talk about how your ego quietly blocks your growth. We're going to talk about why some people keep evolving while other people stay stuck in the same cycle over and over again. And we're going to talk about why the people who grow the most in life are usually the ones who never stop being students of life. So wherever you are right now, maybe you're driving to work, maybe you're walking your dog or cleaning the house or journaling or just even taking a quiet moment for yourself. I want you to do something simple. To kick things off, I just want you to breathe. I want you to take a deep breath in through your nose. Let your shoulders relax. And as you exhale from your mouth, I want you to release whatever tension you are carrying for this day so far. Again, breathe in. And exhale. I want you to give yourself permission to approach this conversation with an open mind, not from a place of judgment. You have been judged enough. Society will do all the judging. Okay, you don't have to sit here and judge yourself. So we're going to meet this not from a place of judgment, but from a place of curiosity. Because I think that sometimes the most powerful growth happens when we're willing to learn something new, especially about ourselves. Thank you for the gifts. All right, guys, let's get into it. I want to start, look, right out the rip, y'all. I just want to rip the Band-Aid off. Because y'all going to be like, Coach didn't hold back. Listen, I'm just going to rip the Band-Aid off. We're going to start with the illusion of always being right. Ladies, we're going to stir the greens and cook the corn, okay? Just hear me out. One of the quiet traps that I think that many of us fall in life is the belief that we already know enough. We got our degree and we know everything, right? And I'm going to talk about it like in an arrogant way, right? Not in a loud, boastful way, but like in a subtle kind of way. We know it all. The kind of way where we stop listening as deeply as we used to. The kind of way where we stop questioning our own perspective. The kind of way, where we automatically assume we already understand what's happening. A bunch of empaths we read in the room. Y'all know what I'm talking about. And sometimes that belief doesn't come from ego, right? Sometimes it comes from experience. I'm experienced. I'm older. I'm wiser, right? What's up, Kojo? Welcome in. And when you think about that experience, right? Life has been a great teacher. So when you've lived through certain things, when life has humbled you, it has stretched you, it has tested you. And, when you've had to learn lessons the hard way, you develop instincts, right? You start recognizing the patterns. You start seeing the red flags sooner. You start trusting your own judgment more because life taught you that you had to. And that kind of wisdom is valuable. But here's where we can shift things without realizing it. See, experience can turn into rigidity, right? And when that happens, growth slows down. Because the truth is, life is constantly changing. Everything in life. People change. Situations change. Information changes. And if we're doing the actual work to heal, then that means we have to change too. Thank you so much. We have to change too. But see, when we get stuck in the mindset that I already know how this goes, then all of a sudden we stop allowing space for new understanding. We stop being curious. We stop responding instead of reflecting. We start responding instead of reflecting. And you've probably seen this play out in conversations before. LaShonda, welcome in, sis. Right? You've been talking to someone, and before you can even finish your thought, they cut in with a girl, I already know. Or that's not how this works. Or the classic one, trust me, I've been there too. I've been through that. Right? And so again, experience can, absolutely offer insight. Right? Sometimes that mindset shuts down before, the possibility of even seeing something from a new angle. Because again, I think this is something that we don't talk about enough, right? Sometimes what we think we know is actually just what we've always believed, right? Sometimes what we're defending isn't truth, it's what's familiar. Oftentimes we simply defend comfort, right? It's the story that we've told ourselves for so long that questioning it feels uncomfortable. So we defend comfort. But growth requires us to be willing to look at the situation again, to reconsider, right? To ask ourselves, is there something here that I haven't seen before? And that question is powerful. Because the moment we begin, to become willing to see things differently, then the door to growth opens up again. The illusion of always being right feels safe, but safety doesn't always equal growth. Sometimes the most powerful breakthroughs happen the moment that we say, you know what? I hadn't even thought about it like that before. That simple sentence right there can shift everything in your life. And it's important that we talk about ego for just a moment, right? And again, coming into this conversation, I want to make sure that I'm approaching this with compassion. I don't want it to come off as me being judgy, because every single one of us has an ego. It is part of being human, right? And the thing about the ego is that it isn't always loud. It doesn't always look like arrogance. It doesn't always walk into a room with pride and announce itself. Sometimes our egos are quiet. Sometimes ego shows up, in the way that we defend ourselves before we even understand the situation. Y'all know what I'm talking about? Those moments where somebody gives you feedback and immediately something inside of you tightens up. Before you've even thought about what they say, your mind just jumps to who they think they are to be telling me anything. Right? We say, oh, they don't know my situation. They're just being critical. They just judging me. Now, sometimes people are critical, right? That does happen. You know what I'm saying? But other times, ego steps in before our curiosity even gets a chance. Ego doesn't like discomfort. And growth, real growth, almost always starts with discomfort. And ego also shows up in subtle ways that we don't recognize. It shows up when someone tries to explain something and then we interrupt with, I already know. It shows up when we listen to respond instead of listening to understand. It shows up when we feel the need to prove that we are knowledgeable instead of allowing ourselves to learn something new. And, the tricky thing about ego is that it disguises itself as self-protection, right? Your mind tells you, don't let them question you. Don't let them correct you. Don't, let them think that you don't know what you're doing. Hey, Tiffany, right? But here's the truth. Being teachable doesn't mean that you're weak. Being open to learn doesn't mean that you're less intelligent. Being willing to say, I didn't know that, is actually a sign of emotional maturity. Because the strongest people in the room are rarely the ones who have to prove that they're right. She said, dang, I ain't know I was going to need my boots this morning, girl. I'm going to start coming with disclaimers for everything. But, typically the strongest or smartest people in the room are the ones who are secure enough to grow. And, you have to understand that sometimes ego blocks growth because it's protecting an identity that we've built over time. Maybe you've always been the smart one. Maybe you've always been the strong one. Maybe you've always, been the one that people come to for answers. So, when you think about it that way, admitting that you don't know something or admitting that you might see something differently now can feel like it threatens your whole identity. But real confidence isn't fragile. Real confidence says, you know what? I'm secure enough to know who I am. And I'm secure enough in who I am that learning something new won't diminish me. It actually expands me, right? And that's the difference between ego and humility. Ego says, I already know. But humility says, there might be something I can learn here. And the moment we shift from ego to curiosity, our entire perspective opens up. Because curiosity creates space for growth. Just like we out here making room to breathe, curiosity is making room for us to grow. And if you think about it, growth is where transformation lives. And let me tell y'all something else. Teachable people grow faster. So for those of you who feel like you have been stuck and you're like, Dag, why can't I get to the next level? Why can't I heal from this? Why can't I get through this? Why am I not over this? Maybe you need to hear this section because, again, teachable people grow faster, right? One thing I've learned over the years, whether I'm coaching someone, if I'm having conversations in the community, talking to my friends, or just observing life, one thing that I've learned is that the people who grow the most are usually the ones who stay teachable. They're not the ones who are walking around pretending that they have everything figured out. They're not the ones who always need to be the smartest voice in the room. They're the ones who remain curious, the ones who ask questions. They listen closely when someone shares a perspective that's different than their own. They reflect instead of reacting. And what makes this powerful is that teachable people don't see learning as a threat to their identity. They see it as an opportunity to expand. You can almost recognize these people by the way they move through conversations. They say things like, "That's interesting. Tell me about it." Right? Or, "I haven't thought of it that way." Or, "You know what? I can see how that makes sense." Now, think about how different that energy feels compared to someone who approaches every single conversation like a debate, right? Someone who listens long enough to just jump in and prove their point. Someone who treats every difference like an opinion, right? Every single difference of opinion like a challenge to their authority. See, teachable people move differently. Butterfly, welcome back. Teachable people understand something that many people miss. And it's that you don't lose power by learning. You gain perspective. You don't lose power by learning. You gain perspective. And, perspective is one of, the most valuable things that you can have in life. Because perspective helps you navigate relationships better. It helps you to make wiser decisions. It helps you to recognize patterns sooner. It helps you to see both the situation and yourself more clearly. And here's another beautiful, beautiful thing about teachable people. They grow faster because they don't waste energy pretending they know everything. Like, do y'all know how time consuming it is to have to know everything all the time in every situation? To have to prove yourself to somebody over and over again? Thank you for the follow, Lotus. I mean, just think about that. When someone feels like they have to protect their image as the one who knows it all, right? When you're walking around thinking that you have to be the one who knows everything, right? You often end up avoiding situations where you might be corrected, right? Those type of people avoid asking questions. They avoid admitting uncertainty. But teachable people can lean into learning. They'll ask someone younger for insight. They'll read something that challenges their belief. They'll sit with ideas that stretch their thinking, right? Teachable people listen to podcasts and motivational speeches and TED Talks. Even if the topic may challenge them, they'll sit with the ideas that stretch their thinking. I can listen to someone else's perspective and maybe I still don't agree with it, but I can hear you out, right? Thank you for the follow, True. And, because teachable people are willing to do that, they evolve. Their mindset expands. Their awareness deepens. Thank you so much. Their emotional intelligence grows. And that kind of growth doesn't just improve your life, it transforms the way you show up in the world. Because when you stay teachable, you stay adaptable, right? And adaptability is one of the most powerful strengths that a person can have. Because, again, life is always shifting. Circumstances change. Relationships evolve. New information comes to light every day. But when you remain open to learning, those shifts don't break you, they refine you. Teachable people understand something simple yet so profound. They understand that life is a classroom, right? Every single experience, every conversation, every challenge, every mistake is just a lesson waiting to be understood. Life is a classroom. So instead of trying to prove that you're right all the time, just stay focused on becoming wiser over time. I promise you that mindset changes everything. In fact, wisdom often comes through correction. So again, let's be honest. Correction is uncomfortable, right, Lotus? Nobody wakes up in the morning hoping that somebody points out something that they got wrong. Like, we just don't do that. Nobody enjoys hearing, you might want to read that. Or there's another way to look at that. Correction can sting a little bit. Sometimes it bruises our pride. Sometimes it makes us defensive. Sometimes it triggers that immediate reaction inside of us, right? And we be like, hold on now, not too much. Wait a minute, right? And if we're not careful, we can miss the value that the correction carries. Because correction isn't always about criticism. Sometimes correction is guidance. Sometimes it's wisdom being offered to us through somebody else's, perspective or experience. I mean, think about it. If you've ever had a mentor, a coach, a teacher, or even a friend who loved you enough to be honest with you, you know what I'm talking about. These are the people that don't just clap for you when you're doing well, but they also tell you when something isn't working. They'll say things like, hey, I want to approach this a little differently. Or let's think about the bigger picture here. I hear what you're saying, but let's go bigger, right? Or have you ever considered how that came across? Exactly. Sometimes it's about telling someone about their behavior. And that doesn't always feel good, because in the moment, those conversations can feel uncomfortable. But later, when you realize those moments help shape your growth, then all of a sudden you appreciate them more. Because correction has a way of refining us. Just like a sculptor chisels away at the stone to reveal the final shape, correction helps to remove things that are getting in the way of our development. Maybe it's a habit that we didn't realize that we had, right? Maybe it's a pattern that we've been repeating. Maybe it's a perspective that needs expanding. And here's something important to remember. Not every correction is meant to shame you. The right correction is meant to strengthen you. But if our ego is too loud, then we hear every single piece of feedback as a personal attack instead of an opportunity. We shut down instead of leaning in. We defend instead of reflecting. And when that happens, we miss the lesson altogether. Now, I want to be clear about something. Being teachable doesn't mean that you have to accept every single opinion that comes your way. Not everybody is speaking into your life. And I'm sorry, not everybody that's speaking into your life is qualified to guide you. Okay? Some people criticize from a place of insecurity, projection, and misunderstanding. So that is why I always tell you discernment matters. So I need for you to hear me when I say being teachable does not mean that you have to accept every single opinion that comes your way. But when correction comes from a place of wisdom, love, or experience, it's worth listening to. And even if you don't immediately agree with it, even if you need time to sit with it, even if it challenges something that you previously believed, it's worth listening to. Because I think that many of the lessons that help us grow the most are the ones that first made us uncomfortable. I mean, think back in your life where somebody told you something that you didn't want to hear, but later you realized that they were right. Maybe it was about a relationship. Maybe it was about a habit that you had, or maybe it was about the way you showed up in a certain situation. And at the time, you might have resisted it. But later, you saw the wisdom in it. Exactly. Discomfort usually equals growth. Absolutely. And that's the beauty of correction when we're willing to receive it with humility. It sharpens you. It matures you. It expands your awareness. Because sometimes the lesson that we need, the lesson that we need most arrives wrapped in a little bit of discomfort. Just a little, not too much. And, when we allow ourselves to learn from it, that discomfort evolves into growth. And so I need for us to really, truly understand that there is a difference between confidence and closed-mindedness. I think that this is worth talking about because, in my opinion, this is something that gets misunderstood a lot. There is a difference between confidence and closed-mindedness. And I think that a lot of people confuse the two things. Now, confidence says, I trust my perspective, I trust my instincts, I trust the wisdom that I've gained from my experiences. That is confidence. But closed-mindedness says, my perspective is the only one that matters. Confidence allows room for growth. Closed-mindedness shuts the door before growth even has a chance to enter. And sometimes the line between the two can get blurry, especially when we've worked hard to develop self-trust. Because, I mean, again, let's be honest. For a lot of us, learning to trust ourselves was a part of our healing journey, right? Maybe you spent years doubting your voice. Maybe you were in relationships where your feelings were dismissed or minimized. Maybe you were taught to second guess your own intuition. So when you finally learn how to trust yourself, that shift can feel powerful. And it is powerful. But self-trust and openness have to coexist together. Because trusting yourself doesn't mean that you stop learning. It means that you're secure enough in who you are that learning something new doesn't threaten your identity. Confidence sounds like, I believe in my judgment, but I'm still open to understanding more. Closed-mindedness sounds like, I already know everything I need to know. I got my degree. I know every damn thing. Right? And see, the danger in closed-mindedness is that it slowly limits your growth. The danger in closed-mindedness is that it slowly limits your growth. You stop hearing new ideas. You stop seeing different perspectives. You stop allowing your thinking to expand. And so what happens is, over time, that kind of rigidity can make people feel stuck in the same patterns, the same conflicts on repeat, the same misunderstandings again and again and again. Because when we refuse to look at things differently, we often end up repeating the same lesson. But confident people move differently. Confident people are comfortable saying, that's an interesting perspective, or I hadn't thought about it that way. Or even, you know what? You might be right about that. And it takes a different kind of openness, right? A kind of openness that doesn't weaken your voice, right? It actually strengthens it if you think about it. Because the more perspectives that you're willing to consider, the more balanced and thoughtful your understanding becomes. I always tell people, just because, I'm wrong, it doesn't make them right. Or just because they're right doesn't mean that I can't be right too. Or at the end of the day, we might both be wrong, right? I mean, think about some of the wisest people you've encountered. They weren't the ones that were constantly arguing their point. They weren't the ones trying to prove that they're right in every conversation. They're the ones who listen deeply, the ones who speak thoughtfully, who understand that truth has layers, and wisdom grows when we allow ourselves to see those layers. Because the goal in life isn't to win every argument. The goal is to grow in understanding. Pellucid, welcome back, beautiful. And so when we start to shift our focus from proving ourselves all the time to expanding ourselves, our mindset becomes more flexible, right? Our relationships become healthier, and our personal growth becomes deeper. Confidence says, I know who I am. But wisdom adds something beautiful to that statement. Wisdom takes that statement and says, I know who I am, and I'm still learning who I can become. Healing requires teachable moments. If you have ever been doing any real inner work, you already know this, right? Healing requires teachability. You cannot grow, evolve, or break patterns if you're not willing to learn something new about yourself. And sometimes those lessons don't come easy. Sometimes healing starts with realizing that some of the things we learned early in life weren't healthy. Maybe you learned that love meant overgiving. Maybe you learned that peace meant staying quiet. Maybe you learned that being strong meant handling everything all by yourself. Maybe you learned that your needs didn't matter as much as everybody else's. And when those beliefs are repeated long enough, it becomes normal. Right? They become the way that you operate in your relationships and family dynamics, even in the way that you talk to yourself. Yeah, you have to unlearn things, because healing has a way of disrupting those old patterns. Miss Cynthia, welcome in, beautiful. Healing asks questions that can feel uncomfortable at first. Questions like, why do I keep tolerating things hurting me? Why do I struggle to say no? Why do I feel responsible for everybody else's emotions? Why do I keep attracting the same kind of relationships? See, those questions require humility, because answering them often means acknowledging something that we didn't see before. It means recognizing that some of our habits, right, the things that we thought were survival skills, might actually be patterns that we need to change. And that realization can feel really heavy at first, right? When you start your healing, you begin to see things differently. You start recognizing dynamics that once felt normal. You start noticing red flags that you used to ignore. You start realizing where you abandon yourself trying to keep the peace. And those realizations don't come from pretending that we already know everything. Coyote Universe, thank you for the follow. Right? They come from being teachable, from being willing to say, let me sit down real quick and look at this honestly. Let me learn something from this experience. Let me grow beyond the version of me that once thought this was normal. And see, that's the beautiful thing about healing. It's not about blaming yourself for what you didn't know. Cars, welcome back. It's about honoring the moment you become aware enough to choose differently. That word, choose. Choose differently. Because awareness is the first step towards transformation. Once you see something clearly, you cannot unsee it. Once you recognize a pattern, you can begin to break it. Once you understand your worth, you begin to move differently through the world. But all of that begins with your willingness to learn, a willingness to reflect, a willingness to grow beyond the beliefs and behaviors that once shaped you. Absolutely true. You have to begin to restructure your nervous system. Many of us have to unlearn so much toxic mess. It's like we have to reparent ourselves. And see, healing asks us to unlearn things that we once believed were normal. And unlearning requires openness. It requires curiosity. It requires teachability. Because the healed version of yourself is not the version that knows everything. The healed version of you is the one who remains open to learning, growing, and evolving. And see, that kind of growth is powerful. So we have to be willing to remain students of life. I think that one of the most beautiful mindsets that a person can develop is the choice to remain a student of life. And that is not because you lack wisdom. It's because you understand that wisdom is something that continues to grow as long as you stay open. Some people, reach a point where they feel like they've learned enough. They've had their experiences, they form their opinions, and they settle in a place, where their thinking becomes very fixed. But the people who continue to evolve emotionally, spiritually, mentally, right? Those are the ones that stay curious about life. They stay curious about people. They stay curious about themselves. They stay curious about the lessons hidden inside of everyday experiences. They don't approach life with the mindset of, I already know. They approach life with the mindset of, what is this moment trying to show me? And when you live like that, every single experience that you encounter becomes a classroom, right? A difficult conversation becomes a lesson in communication. A mistake becomes a lesson in awareness. A challenge becomes a lesson in resilience. Even the uncomfortable seasons of life, the most, those moments where things don't always go the way that we expect them to, right? Even those uncomfortable seasons of life carry lessons that help shape who we become. Exactly, Miss Cynthia. But you only see the lesson when you remain open to learning. Think about how many times life has tried to teach you something that, you didn't want to hear at the time. Maybe it was through a relationship that ended. Maybe it was, through a situation where you realized you needed stronger boundaries. Maybe it was through a mistake that forced you to slow down and reflect. In the moment, those experiences can feel frustrating and painful. But when you actually pause and look back at the situation, you realize that those moments were actually teaching you something important. And that was simply the power of staying a student of life. Instead of seeing every single challenge as something happening to you, you begin to see it as something happening for you. You start asking different questions. Instead of asking, why is this happening to me? You start asking, what can I learn from this? And that shift in perspective is so powerful, because when you remain teachable, you stop resisting the lessons that life is offering you. Yeah, it's a huge difference. When you remain teachable, you stop resisting the lessons that life is offering you, and you start receiving them. And the more lessons that you receive, the more wisdom that you gain. You begin to understand people better. You begin to understand yourself better. You begin to move through life with more patience, more discernment, and more emotional intelligence. And see, the beautiful thing about staying a student of life is that it keeps your spirit flexible. It keeps you growing. It keeps you evolving. Because the truth is, none of us ever reach a final destination where we know everything. I mean, life is an ongoing journey of discovery. And so the people who experience the deepest growth are the ones who never stop learning along the way. They don't just age, they mature, right? They don't just experience life, they understand it more deeply with every single lesson. And that's the quiet power of staying teachable. It keeps your mind open, your heart humble, and your spirit ready for the next level of growth that's waiting ahead. And there's also something powerful when it comes to self-reflecting, right? Sometimes the lesson doesn't come from another person. Sometimes the lesson comes from the quiet moments where you sit with yourself long enough to really think about what just happened, right? Self-reflection is the moment when you pause and ask, what just happened here? Yes, Miss Cynthia. We start to ask ourselves, why did I react that way? What can I learn about this experience? And, in a world that moves as fast as ours, a lot of people skip this step. Instead, we react. we defend, we move on, right? But when we don't take the time to reflect, we often repeat the same lesson over and over again. You ever notice how certain situations keep showing up in your life until you finally understand what it was trying to teach you? So you got the same relationship, different person, same relationship, the same conflict, different topic, same conflict, the same emotional trigger. They said something different, but it still stung, right? Same trigger. It's like life keeps presenting the same exam until we finally pass the class. And that's where self-reflection becomes powerful. Recycled drama and trauma, girl. Yes. And that's why I said self-reflection is such a powerful thing, because reflection slows everything down. It creates space between what happened and how we respond to it moving forward. Instead of immediately pointing fingers or blaming somebody else, reflection asks us to be honest with ourselves, not in a way that shames us. Have an amazing day, beautiful. Thank you so much. Right? It wants us to check ourselves. Like I said, not in a shameful way, but in a way that helps us to grow. See, reflection sounds like, okay, what part did I play in that situation? Or what was I feeling in that moment that made me react that way? Or even, what boundary do I need to set so this don't keep happening? See, those questions take courage, because reflection requires honesty. And honesty is something that reveals things about ourselves that we didn't fully notice before. Maybe it reveals, a pattern that we've been repeating. Maybe it reveals the fear that we've been avoiding. Maybe it reveals that we've outgrown something that we've been so comfortable with over the years. But here's the thing. And it's a beautiful thing, right? When it comes to reflection, when you become someone who regularly reflects on your experiences, you start learning from life in real time. Ruth, welcome in, beautiful. You don't have to wait years to understand the lessons. You begin catching the patterns sooner. You begin recognizing your triggers sooner. You begin adjusting your responses sooner. And that's how growth accelerates, right? Self-reflection turns life into a classroom where every single experience becomes a source of wisdom. Thank you so much, Melody. Instead of, just going through life, you begin growing through life. You start noticing how your words affect people. You start noticing how certain environments affect your energy. You start noticing how your thoughts influence your decisions. And see, that awareness changes everything. Because when you're aware, you can choose differently. You can respond differently. You can show up differently. And that is the quiet power of self-reflection. It keeps you teachable, not just from others, but from your own experiences. And when you combine teachability with reflection, something beautiful happens. You stop repeating lessons and you start evolving through them. We grow through what we go through. So family, let's bring this all home, right? Today's whole conversation really just comes back to the simple truth that you learn nothing if you think you're right all the time. And I know that does not feel good to always hear, right? But let's be real. Being wrong is uncomfortable. Real uncomfortable. It messes with our pride. It pokes at our ego. It challenges the stories that we've been telling ourselves all along, right? The stories that we've been telling ourselves about who we are and how we move through the world. But here's the thing. Growth isn't about being right. Growth is about being honest. Honest enough to say, maybe I didn't see that clearly. Honest enough to say, I could have handled that differently. Honest enough to say, there might be something I still need to learn here. And if we're being really real, a lot of lessons that changed our lives came with moments where we had to sit with that kind of truth. Moments where life humbled us a little bit. Moments where we had to admit we were missing a red flag. Moments where we realized we kept repeating the same patterns. Moments where someone told us something that we didn't want to hear, but deep down, we knew they weren't wrong. Those moments don't feel good in real time, but they shape us. They mature us. They wake us up. And that's why staying teachable matters so much. Because when you think you already know everything, life stops being a classroom. You stop growing. You stop reflecting. You stop evolving. And before you know it, you're stuck in the same arguments, the same relationship patterns, the same emotional cycles that you said you were trying to grow out of. But when you say teachable, things shift. You stop trying to win every conversation. You start trying to understand the lesson. You stop defending every mistake and you start learning from them. You stop pretending that you have to have it all figured out and you just start becoming wiser because you're willing to look at things honestly. Thank you. And that's where real growth lives. Not in perfection, not in always having the answer, but in being willing to evolve. So today, I want you to sit with one question. Not for me, but for yourself. Today, I want you to ask yourself, where in your life might you be holding on too tightly to being right? Where in your life might you be holding on too tightly to being right? Is it in your relationship? Is it in how you respond to feedback? Is it a pattern that life keeps trying to show you, but you keep explaining away? Just think about that. Because sometimes the breakthrough that you've been waiting for is sitting right on the other side of humility. Right on the other side of being able to say, you know what? Let me look at that again. Let me sit with that for a minute. Absolutely. And see, family, that kind of awareness, that's not weakness. That is wisdom. That is wisdom. So I'm encouraging you to stay teachable, to stay reflective, stay committed to becoming the version of you that life is trying to shape you into. And remember, sometimes the most powerful thing that you can say in life is that I'm still learning. I'm still learning. Now, if this conversation hit home for you today, please drop some green hearts in the chat. Y'all know that's our way of saying I am healing. I am growing. Right? I am open to becoming better, because that is what we do around here. And if you want to keep growing with us, I do invite you to come tap into our community. We have a Room2Breathe project community that is powered through school. It is a safe space with like-minded individuals. My brain is like, spit it out. It's a community of like-minded individuals that are committed to growing and healing out loud. So again, if you are interested in, joining a support community that actually helps with people who are actually committed to helping you grow and growing together and healing out loud, head over to our website at selfcareclub.org. Those of you who are on TikTok, you can just press the link in my bio and join our Room to Breathe project community powered by school. For everyone else, you can just go directly to the website, selfcareclub.org. You know, that community is where we keep these conversations going, where we support each other through the real work of healing and self-awareness. Bio, your profile page. So on TikTok, if you just go to the profile page, if you click my picture, you can go to my profile page, and there is a little link that is right there in my description. And then when you click on that, it will open up my beacons link for you. And you will see the invitation to the community. It is a free community to join. And, you know, we have conversations in real time. Life happens, you know, in the moments right then and there. So if you're going through something, it doesn't have to always be bad. You don't always have to have a question. Maybe you just want to share your win for today. You know, maybe you've been battling depression and you got up and took a shower today and you just want to say, hey, I just wanted y'all to know I got up and took a shower today. We're gonna throw a little party for you because that's big. Because we know that sometimes just getting up is all we got. So it is a safe space. We are a growing community. I think we're about to hit maybe 70 members over there. It definitely has a lot of food for thought. So I definitely encourage you, and it's for men and women because, you know, self-care is for everybody, honey. We do not discriminate. We are worldwide. So you'll meet some people out the country, right? But we family. We all family in the club, right? In the club. Self-care club. But seriously, guys, as always, I am here to encourage you to keep breathing. Hey, Suzanne. I want you to keep breathing through the highs, the lows, and every moment in between. I encourage you to keep choosing peace, even if it feels out of reach. And know that here at the Self-Care Club, you will always be seen, always valued, and always supported. So don't be afraid to take up space, speak your truth, and make a little room for you to breathe. I love each and every one of you to life. And I am praying that your day is not just amazing, but aligned, intentional, and yes, on purpose, filled with purpose. This has been another Room to Breathe podcast, and I cannot wait to connect with you all again soon. Thank you.